Because yes, there are many, many, many delegates and many, many states still to go. But you finished 4th in Iowa, 8th in New Hampshire, 6th in South Carolina. The latest CNN poll of polls has you with 7% of the support nationally. How do you turn this around?
Well, hopefully what we will start doing now that the number of candidates is smaller is actually look at the issues, actually talk about the solutions, and not make it a personality contest. And I think that will help quite a bit. You know, just being able to focus on the real problems rather than getting people into arguments all the time.
But how does it, Doctor, significantly change when you have most of the headlines are right now Trump versus Cruz, who's lying, who's telling the truth, et cetera. How does that get to the issues?
Well, obviously it's going to have to be we the people who change the issues. That's not ever going to happen with the media because they want to sell headlines. They're not interested in what's happening to the country.
That's what the candidates are talking about, sir. They're pointing fingers at one another.
No, that's what the candidates are asked about. They're always asked about the controversy. It's like the ancient Romans in the Colosseum. Everybody wants to go and see the blood and the gore. Nobody is paying attention to the fact that Rome is burning.
You say to get back to the issues, but you said this during an interview. Let's play it.
Like most Americans, I was proud that we broke the color barrier when he was elected. But I also recognize that his experience and my experience are night and day different. He didn't grow up like I grew up by any stretch of the imagination. Not even close.
He's an African American as opposed to an African American.
African American. He was, raised white. Many of his formative years were spent in Indonesia. So for him to, claim that, he identifies with the experience of black Americans, I think is a bit of a stretch.
So you say, sir, talk about the issues, yet you spent a good portion of the interview with Politico last night talking about President Obama's race. Why is that?
Well, I would say go back and read the whole interview. That wasn't very much of it, quite frankly.
I did read it.
And Politico did put the whole thing out there, so you can see that that's a relatively small portion of it. But here's the real key. America, and many people in America are still very uncomfortable when it comes to issues of race. And, I once again crossed the PC barrier. I don't think anybody would deny that someone who is raised in Hawaii by his white grandparents and then spent formative years in Indonesia with his white mother does not have the typical black experience. If anybody can explain to me how that's the typical black experience, I stand corrected.
The president lived in Indonesia from age 6 to age 10. When you said that he was raised white, can you walk us through what does that mean? How should people understand that?
Well, that doesn't mean anything bad. It's only the PC police who've tried to interpret that as something bad.
So what does it mean?
It's just that I'm going to tell you, his cultural experience is vastly different than that of the majority of black people who were raised in America. That's what I'm saying. Does it mean that it's worse? No. People are raised in different cultures, and they have different cultural experiences.
What did you experience growing up as a black man in Detroit? What did you experience that is different from the president? Because it seems like you're juxtaposing the two, and that's fair, so walk me through it.
Well, that would take a very, very long time. But the fact of the matter is, I grew up in Detroit and I grew up in Boston. In Boston, we lived in the ghetto. There were a lot of violent episodes there. There were rats, there were roaches. It was dire poverty. I had a mother who worked starting at 5 in the morning, getting home after midnight, going from job to job to job. She didn't like the ideal of being on welfare. Most people said, you got 2 boys, you can be on aid to dependent children. She didn't want to do that. Now, let me contrast that to the president, who went to private schools, grew up in a relatively affluent environment. I had an opportunity to live in multiple cultures in different countries. I think that's a very different experience.
Why why not criticize President Obama on his policy, on merits?
I wasn't
Instead,
criticizing him. See, excuse me, but that's you guys in the news media who are trying to make it into a fight. I'm just stating the obvious facts.
Let me reframe it this way then, if that's what you believe. That's how many people interpret it, I would tell you, Dr. Carson. But why then speak about the president in terms of race and how he was raised and not on policy and merits? Because this isn't a candidate you're running against, and this comes on the eve of the Nevada caucuses. How does this help you get more support?
Well, I'm talking about the facts. What we were talking about is, you know, I said that I was proud of the fact that the color barrier had been broken, but there's a difference in breaking the color barrier in somebody who's had the typical experience versus somebody who has not. And for you and the rest of the media to try to pretend like just because your skin is the same color, it means you've all grown up in the same way, doesn't make any sense. I'm pointing that fact out. You're not supposed to point that fact out because it makes people uncomfortable, and therefore the PC police come down on you. But I will fight them tooth and nail on this. And I will tell you that anybody who's sensible knows that the way that he was brought up is very different from the way that most black people in this country are brought up.
Are you saying then, sir, that if you were elected president, you would be the first truly African-American?
That was you guys. That was you guys who said that.
I
never said that.
I'm asking you, do you believe
No.
the headlines that said that this morning?
I believe that all the emphasis on race is way overblown. And I think this conversation is contributing to it. I think this is a nothing burger myself.
All right, I want to turn to a major headline today, the president's plans to close Guantanamo Bay. Let's listen to part of what he said earlier.
With this plan, we have the opportunity finally to eliminate a terrorist propaganda tool, strengthen relationships with allies and partners, enhance our national security, and most importantly, uphold the values that define us as Americans. I'm absolutely committed to closing the detention facility at Guantanamo.
This is something that he pledged to do. You'll remember, sir, back in 2009, just as he became president.
Sure.
7 years later, he's presenting it to Congress. Not just him. I mean, his predecessor, President George W. Bush, wanted to close Guantanamo. What would you do as president?
Well, you have to look at, you know, what are the benefits and what are the costs. Now, they're saying that because it costs $400+ million a year to keep open, that it's not worth doing. But you have to also ask yourself, where do we have that we can take these prisoners of war? We're involved in a long-term war here. This is not something that's just going to disappear. And we need to have a place to take people. We need to have a place where we can try to derive information from them that will be beneficial to us in terms of our safety. And I'm not seeing what the alternative is, quite frankly. So until we have a better alternative, I certainly would not close it. I want to hear the explanations on how we're going to derive that information. And, you know, he's assuming that the next president will want to do the things the way that he does them, which is to kill the opposition rather than to capture the opposition and derive important information that can help us to protect ourselves.
So to the president's claim that not only is it extraordinarily expensive, but to his claim, as he spoke about today, that it helps recruit terrorists, that it is one of the things that drives terrorists against this country, are you concerned about that? Do you agree with him that it is used as a recruitment tool?
No. I think what's used as a recruitment tool frequently is money. And, you know, people should go to my website, bencarson.com, and read about ways to tap down terrorism. One of the ways is you shut down their monetary channels because they go after the disaffected members of society from all over the world, and they're able to improve their standard of living with money. That's their recruitment tool, not Guantanamo Bay.
So Ted Cruz came out. Obviously, he lambasted the president for this announcement, as did Marco Rubio, as did a number of your competitors on the GOP side. But Ted Cruz said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically we should put more people in there. And how do you look the families in the face who have been harmed through terrorism and had their loved ones taken from them, and keep it open? So I'm interested specifically in what you would do as president. Would you bring more suspected terrorists there?
I don't think we need to raise the tenor of discord here. What we need to say is, what alternative do we have to this when we capture these terrorists? And if somebody has a good alternative, I would be all ears. I would be wanting to listen to it. I don't think we have to make this into an ideological argument. I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish, and what is the best way to do that, and sit down and talk about it. That's what I would do.
But you don't agree that the president's plan to send some of those detainees over to other countries, such as Oman, et cetera, to be overseen by their authorities, and to put some in maximum security and DOD facilities in the U.S. is the right plan. That's not a plan you accept.
Well, just remember, for the ones that we have sent to other countries, a third of them at least seem to end up back on the battlefield threatening our security. So that obviously is not the correct way to do it. We need to be looking at evidence. When you make decisions based on ideology and not on evidence, they inevitably turn out to be wrong.
So the numbers we have, just to be clear for our viewers here, are that 3 former Gitmo detainees who were sent back to Yemen then went on to join AQAP. But moving on, I want to get your take on this. Last week at a campaign event in South Carolina, Donald Trump was asked about waterboarding, and he referred to it as, quote, sort of the least form of torture, or, quote, the minimal form. He then went on to suggest that the United States should perhaps go beyond waterboarding, use other methods of terror. And he said at the end of his remarks, quote, torture works. Do you agree with Mr. Trump on that?
I believe there are a number of ways to extract information, including, some medical ways of, putting people into a less than conscious state, which allows information to be extracted much more
What do you mean, sir, by
humanely.
medical? What do you mean by medical ways?
Well, the average person might understand it as truth serum, but there are ways where you decrease a person's conscious defenses, and they might be much more willing to give up information.
What is truth serum? What is that?
Sodium amytal. But there are a variety of different things that can be used now. We've made some advances in that kind of science.
Is Donald Trump right when he talks about waterboarding as being sort of the minimal form of torture, and perhaps we should go beyond it? Should we go beyond it?
Well, it's not really about Donald Trump. It's about how do we protect the American people? What methods do we use? And I think we use what we need to use in order to protect the American people, and I don't think we necessarily need to be broadcasting what we do.
You very publicly had a campaign shakeup. You replaced your campaign manager. As you sit back and look at that, do you think that has helped you? Has it hurt the campaign?
It has helped me tremendously, no question about it. We had people who really didn't seem to understand finances, or maybe they did, maybe they were doing it on purpose. But obviously things have improved tremendously since that time, and the morale is much better. The esprit de corps. So yes, it was a tremendous benefit to us.
All right, so let's take a look. If we talk about the map and the map that lies ahead after Nevada tonight, what does your path forward look like, Dr. Carson? What states are you banking on? What states can you win?
I am banking on the American people recognizing that it is we the people which will be the only thing that will change the course that we're on. Doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans. Well, let me listen carefully what I'm saying. All states where there are people, I think there's a possibility that the people begin to recognize that they're being manipulated by the political class and by the media, who want to control them and want to control the narrative and want to control who the candidates are.
Do you think that's
I believe that is going to happen.
Do you think that's giving enough credit, Dr. Carson, to the voter to say that they're being manipulated by the political class and by the media, that they aren't thinking on their own?
I know that that's an attempt for you to try to get them on your side, but I think they're smarter than that, and I think they're going to see through it. They have to recognize, and we all have to recognize, we the people, the reason that people are so angry and the reason that people are moving toward people like Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders is because they're angry. When people make decisions out of anger, you get different decisions. But as we go further into this process, I believe people are going to start actually looking at the policies that people are putting forth and the solutions to the things that are creating the anger. And that's what's going to solve the problem for us.
All right, I'm out of time, Dr. Carson, but I